In the dead of night, a nun slipped out of her convent, pregnant with a king's child. If discovered, she would be buried alive. He ruled England with absolute power. She had sworn herself to God. Their love was forbidden. Their betrayal, unforgivable. And what happened next was so explosive, it shook a throne, divided a kingdom, and nearly erased her name from history. But this was no legend. This was real. The year was 1101. England was raw and restless after the Norman conquest. Castles clawed at the sky. Stone churches dominated every village. The church held souls in one hand, and kings held swords in the other. At the center of this uneasy world stood a young ruler, Henry I of England. Cold-eyed, brilliant, ruthless. He was known for his sharp mind and sharper temper. He enforced royal law with brutal precision. He kept a ledger of debts and enemies. But Henry had a weakness: women. He fathered more than 20 illegitimate children, noble women, widows, ladies-in-waiting, and one day a nun. Her name was Matilda of Scotland, or so the world believed. But here is the first secret. Before she was queen, before she wore silk and jewels, she lived behind convent walls. And what happened inside those walls would ignite a scandal so dangerous that even bishops trembled. Matilda was born around 1080, daughter of Malcolm III of Scotland and the devout Margaret of Wessex, later canonized as Saint Margaret. From childhood, Matilda was sent to a convent in England for protection and education. Protection from political enemies. Education in Latin, scripture, and obedience. The convent was no sanctuary. Stone corridors echoed with prayer. Candles flickered against damp walls. Silence was law. Girls were often placed in convents without consent. Some took vows willingly. Others did not. And here lies the first mystery historians still debate. Did Matilda truly take the veil, or was she forced into it? Years later, she would claim she never took permanent vows, that she wore the veil only for safety. But witnesses remembered something else. And if she had taken vows, if she was truly a consecrated nun, then marriage was impossible. Breaking those vows meant eternal damnation and political catastrophe. In 1100, England's king died in a suspicious hunting accident. Within days, Henry seized the throne. But his claim was fragile. He needed legitimacy. He needed support from the Anglo-Saxon population still bitter over Norman rule. And he needed a bride with royal blood. That bride was Matilda. She carried the lineage of ancient English kings. She was pious, educated, beautiful. There was just one problem. Whispers followed her. She is a nun. If Henry married a vowed nun, the church could declare the union invalid. His reign would collapse. Civil war would follow. So Henry did something extraordinary. He summoned an ecclesiastical council and put Matilda on trial. Picture the hall. Heavy oak beams. Tapestries depicting saints and martyrs. Bishops in dark robes. The air thick with incense and tension. Matilda stood before them, calm, composed. But her future, and Henry's throne, hung in the balance. She swore she had never taken permanent vows, that she had resisted the veil. She claimed she once tore it off publicly. Witnesses were questioned. Clerics debated canon law. If she lied, she risked excommunication. If Henry forced the marriage, he risked rebellion from Rome. For days, arguments raged. And then, the council declared her free to marry. The verdict cleared the path. But that wasn't the worst part. Because some believed the verdict had been influenced. Henry was not a man accustomed to losing. In November 1100, Henry and Matilda married at Westminster Abbey. Church bells rang. Crowds cheered. The union symbolized unity between Norman conquerors and English subjects. But behind the celebration lay a shadow. Many still whispered. She broke sacred vows. She betrayed God. She desired a king more than heaven. Matilda now wore a crown instead of a veil. Yet inside the palace, her position was precarious. Henry was brilliant, but unfaithful. He kept mistresses openly. He fathered children with other women. And each affair humiliated the queen. Here lies our second question. Did Henry truly love her? Or was she merely a political tool? What happened next suggests something far more complicated. Matilda was not a silent ornament. She governed when Henry was away. She issued charters, advised clergy, influenced policy. Chroniclers described her as intelligent, graceful, devout. She softened Henry's harsh image. But she also bore the weight of producing an heir. In 1102, she gave birth to a daughter, Matilda. In 1103, a son, William Adelin. The future of England rested in a cradle. For years, stability held, but fate was waiting, and it came crashing down on a cold November night in 1120. The heir to England boarded a magnificent vessel called the White Ship. Nobles laughed. Wine flowed. Torches flickered against black water. They were young, invincible. The ship struck a hidden rock. Screams tore through the darkness. Wood splintered. Icy water swallowed nobles and princes alike. William Adelin drowned. The only legitimate son of Henry I gone. When the news reached the king, witnesses said he collapsed. And here is the haunting detail. Chroniclers claim he never smiled again. But Matilda never saw this grief. Because she was already dead. She had died in 1118, years before the disaster. And some whispered that her early death was no accident of nature. Matilda died at just around 38 years old. Suddenly, unexpectedly, officially, illness. Unofficially, poison. There were murmurs that factions at court resented her influence. That Henry's mistresses despised her authority. That politics inside the palace was more lethal than any battlefield. Historians tried to bury this. Records are vague. Chronicles cautious. But one fact remains chilling. After her death, Henry remarried quickly. He desperately needed another son. Yet he never got one. The loss of William Adelin, combined with Matilda's absence, triggered a succession crisis that plunged England into a brutal civil war known as the Anarchy. For nearly 2 decades, the kingdom bled. All because one royal line collapsed. And it all traces back to that controversial marriage. To that verdict in a Camelot hall. To the nun who became queen. Remember our first question? Did she truly take vows? Some modern historians suggest she may indeed have been a professed nun. If true, the marriage was canonically invalid. Which would mean her children's legitimacy could be questioned. And the entire succession crisis may have been rooted in spiritual defiance. Imagine that. A whispered vow in a convent, leading to decades of bloodshed. What happened next shocked even the king's legacy. After Henry's death in 1135, chaos erupted. His daughter, Empress Matilda, claimed the throne. But many nobles rejected a female ruler. Civil war followed. Castles burned. Villages starved. Brothers turned on brothers. Chroniclers wrote, Christ and his saints slept. England descended into misery. All because the royal succession had fractured. And at the heart of it all, a marriage once questioned. A nun once accused. A verdict that silenced doubt, but not destiny. Beyond politics, there was a woman. Matilda. A girl placed in a convent for safety. A young woman questioned publicly about her purity. A queen who endured her husband's betrayals. A mother who never lived to see her son drown. Was she ambitious? Or trapped by forces beyond her control? Did she choose Henry? Or was she chosen? We will never know her private thoughts. But we know this. Her life reshaped a nation. Today, tourists walk through Westminster Abbey. They admire royal tombs. Few pause at hers. Few remember the scandal. Few ask the forbidden question. What if the church had ruled differently that day? What if the council had declared her bound to God forever? No marriage. No heir. No white ship tragedy. No anarchy. One verdict. One romance. One fragile claim of innocence. And centuries of consequences. So here is the haunting truth. In the Middle Ages, love was never just love. It was power. It was war. It was salvation or damnation. And sometimes it rewrote history in blood. Tell me, was Matilda a woman who defied her vows for love? Or a pawn sacrificed on the altar of power? Because the answer might change how we see medieval romance forever.